Hi everybody, Matthew Turnage here. One thing I think all Beatles fans have done at one time or another is imagine what would it be like if there was a Beatle album composed of all the great songs from all their solo albums that came out in the 1970s. And I'm sure we've all played with that idea at one time or another, coming up with our own fantasy Beatle album of 1973, for example, taking songs off of the various solo albums and combining them into one hypothetical Beatle album. Well, I did a variation of this some time back, and I thought it might be something fun to share, and also might be something fun if other people would like to play along and do a response video. I'd love to see what sort of playlist other people would come up with this idea. Now, here's the premise of this particular one. This one is a little bit different in that I'm not supposing that the Beatles stayed together and took these songs that ended up on the solo albums and used them as Beatles songs. Rather, my premise is that history continued along as it did, with the Beatles split up and releasing their solo releases. But sometime in, say, late 1974, early 1975, during the period after Alan Klein had left Apple, and before Paul had re-signed with Capitol Records, when he was feeling comfortable allowing the Apple label showing on his solo releases at the time once again, and perhaps there was a little bit of warming of the relationships there. What if at that point Neil Aspinall at Apple Records had gone to the four Beatles and said, "Hey guys, we were incredibly successful with the Red Album, the 1962 to 1966 compilation, and the Blue Album, the 1967 to 1970 compilation. Why don't we do a third release focusing on the solo material that has come out since then?" So this is what I think of as the Green Album, and it covers a similar span of time. The other albums were 4-year periods, 4 and a bit with the Red Album, since we had the the single release of Love Me Do in 1962 to pick up there. And so I took a similar approach. I said, the first true solo song releases, as opposed to John's experimental stuff, George's soundtrack work, came out in 1969. You've got 2 John solo singles that year, so we'll do that, and then we'll cover the full 4 years of the Beatles' post-breakup period, 1970 to 1973. So my Green Album covers 1969 to 1973. And so if you'd like to play along, those are the rules. It's those years, 69 to 73, and also it has to fit on a double album, so 4 sides of vinyl. Now mine, I push right up against the limit of what you could do with vinyl. I think I've got about 25 minutes per side, so that is pushing it a bit. But even then, I had to leave tracks off. I also decided on mine to follow the Red and Blue Album, of sticking with chronological order, basically, for the track listing. And I also put an emphasis on singles, because I feel like that was one of the things, especially at the time of release of the Red and Blue albums. They did have a lot of the non-album single tracks available there on an LP, which not all of them had been prior to that. I also tried to keep things fairly even between John and Paul. Mine's weighted slightly more toward Paul. Maybe my Paul fandom showing through. But I had such a hard time coming up with ways to even it out. But we'll go through that as we go through. Also, the other rule that I adopted for my list was no cover songs, since no cover songs have been included on the Red and Blue albums. So here we go. Solo Beatles 1969 to 1973, aka the Green Album, as compiled by Matthew Turnage. Side 1, which we open up with John's solo debut single, although credited to Plastic Ono Band, Give Peace a Chance. Obviously, that one has to be included. I think it was a landmark of solo Beatles careers with John releasing something, a commercial single song that was a big hit, and releasing it outside of the Beatles banner. So we kick off with "Give Peace a Chance." Next up is John's second solo single, or second Plastic Ono Band single, "Cold Turkey," which came out later in 1969, another hit song, and definitely should be included, I think. And then we have a third John song in a row that opens this album, and that's John's early 1970 single, "Instant Karma," another big hit and another must include for me. So after 3 John songs, we finally get to hear from another of the solo Beatles, and that's Paul McCartney. Now, in that period, you would have had, obviously, Ringo put out "Sentimental Journey," but as I said, no cover songs, so I completely skipped that album and went on to the McCartney album. And of course, I felt "Maybe I'm Amazed" had to be there to represent that release. Is one of Paul's best solo tunes, and I felt like even though it wasn't a single that at the time, if this compilation had been made, then it still would have been one that they would have wanted to include to represent that album. Next after that, we skip again another Ringo release, "Bukus of Blues," even though those weren't cover songs. I wasn't sure, and I like Bukus of Blues, but I just wasn't sure that the country songs would quite fit in with the rest of the collection, and I had some other Ringo stuff later on that would give him enough coverage, I thought. So we move on to George's "All Things Must Pass" album. For the last 2 songs on side 1, of course, the mega #1 hit, "My Sweet Lord," have that on there, and then we close out side 1 with the title track from George's triple LP, "All Things Must Pass," and I felt like that was a pretty good closer for the side. So that's side 1. Just to recap: "Give Peace a Chance," "Cold Turkey," "Instant Karma," "Maybe I'm Amazed," "My Sweet Lord," "All Things Must Pass." Side 2, continuing on with George, "What Is Life," kicks off the side. There's another hit single for George off the "All Things Must Pass" album, and it's one of my favorite George solo tunes. I had to have that on there. But I didn't want "All Things Must Pass" to totally dominate at this point, so I felt like I had to cut it off at those 3 tracks and move on to John's Plastic Ono Band. Now, keeping with the idea of including singles would have meant putting "Mother," but I just didn't feel like "Mother" would have fit in with the flow of the tracks. So I opted for another song off of Plastic Ono Band, "Love," which I felt like worked pretty well coming out of "What Is Life" and then going into the next tune, which would be, as we move into 1971, Paul McCartney's debut solo single, "Another Day." It's a top 5 hit, and so again, I wanted to include as many non-album singles as I could, especially the ones that were the big hits. So "Another Day" is next, and then we move on to John's next non-album single, "Power to the People." And then another non-album single. It's the first representation for Ringo on this set so far. "It Don't Come Easy," probably my favorite Ringo solo tune there. And then back to Paul and Linda McCartney for "Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey," and that will both cover the Ram album and give us Paul's first ever #1 hit in the United States post Beatles. And then we close out the side with the title track of John's album, Imagine. Of course, a big hit single at the time. And after his death, it even went on to number one in the UK on a reissue. But we were still thinking in terms of, again, 74, 75, and of course it still would have been included. It was, I think it peaked at number 3 in the US on its original release. So definitely a huge hit, and even if it had only been an album track, you've got to include it. So that closes out the first LP. We start off the second LP, side 3, and continuing on from John's Imagine album, Jealous Guy. I had to fit that one in there. It's one of my favorite John solo tunes, and I felt like the Imagine album deserved to have 2 tracks on it, especially since I'd skimped a little bit on Plastic Ono Band with only 1 track there. And then we continue on side 3 with Back Off Boogaloo, Ringo's non-album single from early '72. Then we've got 2 non-album tracks from Paul. Now I skipped his Mary Had a Little Lamb and Give Ireland Back to the Irish singles. I didn't feel like they would make the cut on a double album. There's just not room to get that deep into it, even though they charted well. And I also skipped over John's Sometime in New York City album. I was tempted to include New York City, but it's just with limited space, I had to make some hard decisions. So I put both Hi 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 and Sea Moon on there. Again, both non-album tracks. Hi 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 was the big hit in the U.S., and because it was banned in the U.K., Sea Moon got the chart position there. So I felt like both needed to be included. If I were going to drop one, I would probably drop Sea Moon and put New York City in for John off Sometime in New York City. But as is, I've left in both Hi 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 and Sea Moon. And then next we have another number 1 for Paul and Wings, My Love from the Red Rose Speedway album. And then the next track on that, the song that replaced it at number 1 in the U.S., George's Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth. And then we close out side 3 with another top 2 hit for Paul McCartney and Wings, Live and Let Die. And to recap, I don't think I recapped side 2. Side 2 again, What Is Life, Love, Another Day, Power to the People, It Don't Come Easy, Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey, and Imagine. And then side 3, we have Jealous Guy, Back Off Boogaloo, Hi Hi Hi, Sea Moon, My Love, Give Me Peace on Earth, and Live and Let Die. So then moving on to side 4, and now we're coming up to Ringo's big hit album, the Ringo album. And we open it with his number 1 single, Photograph, and then follow that up with the next track, Oh My My. Oh My My, of course, another big solo single for Ringo. I did skip his other number 1, You're 16, because again, like I said, I didn't want to include any cover songs in keeping with the Red and Blue albums. But I felt like Oh My My was a big enough hit to take its place and give us 2 songs representing Ringo's best and most successful solo album. Then next we have Mind Games from John off of that album. And then we have, again, another non-album single from Paul and Wings, Helen Wheels. And then we close it out with the 2 songs from the last solo Beatle album released in 1973, which would both go on to be big hit singles in '74, Jet and Band on the Run. So again, side 4 to recap: Photograph, Oh My My, Mind Games, Helen Wheels, Jet, and Band on the Run. So that gives me 26 songs overall, and that's right in line with the Red album. Also had 26 songs. There were 28 on the Blue album, but I just couldn't squeeze any more songs on here, and not without really breaking the rules of sticking to what you could reasonably fit on side of a 12-inch LP. So that's my list. Love to hear your thoughts. I'll put in a link to the playlist that I created. I originally created it just as a private playlist, but I'll make it public. So if someone wants to just listen through, and see how you think it works. Of course, I've noticed that since I originally created the playlist and I used all the official YouTube videos from the artists to create it where possible, all Johns have been switched over to the ultimate mixes from Give Me Some Truth. They weren't like that when I first set up the playlist. So if you see that, just be aware that I know that they're using the ultimate mixes now, and that's not what would have been on this compilation. But anyway, love to hear your thoughts on my list. And like I said, I'd love to, if anybody else out there in the VC would like to share what their version of a double album Beatles solo compilation covering 69 to 73 would be like. Thanks for watching.